She cheated with my sister during our wedding week, then stole $250, $0 in inheritance money. Now she's suing me for half our house's value despite our divorce and trying to claim the property herself. I'm losing everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I'll start by saying this. I found out my wife was cheating on me during our wedding week. Yeah, that's right, our wedding week. The one time I thought everything was finally going to be perfect, she was out there in the arms of someone else. And not just anyone, her own sister, Lisa. That's a whole other level of betrayal I never saw coming. We'd been together for 6 years. I thought we had a solid relationship. Sure, we had our fights, but who does? Was always a little bitchy, quick to dismiss my feelings, but I chalked it up to her being stressed or just her personality. She's the kind of woman who can be charming one second and downright cruel the next. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We had plans, big ones. We bought a house, got engaged, and I was finally ready to settle down with her, or so I thought. The signs of trouble had been creeping in for months. She'd start staying late at work claiming she was closing deals, but I'd catch her sneaking around with her phone hiding texts. I'd find her deleting messages and I'd get that gut feeling that something was off. Still, I ignored it, convincing myself I was paranoid. Maybe I was overthinking things. Then the week of the wedding arrived. We planned everything meticulously, family coming from out of town, the ceremony at a nice venue. It was supposed to be the happiest week of my life. But about 3 days before the wedding, I started noticing strange things. His phone kept ringing at odd hours, and she was strangely defensive whenever I asked about it. She'd snap, accuse me of being jealous or paranoid. That's when I started paying closer attention. One night I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know, invasion of privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I found texts, flirty, suggestive messages with Lisa, not just innocent sisterly banter. These were explicit. They were talking about sex, about sneaking around behind my back. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe it. My wife, about to marry me, was screwing her own sister. That's when I knew the truth. I confronted her the very next morning. I was furious. My voice was shaking, my hands clenched into fists. I showed her the messages. Her face went pale, then she started lying like a pro. She told me it was all a mistake, that Lisa was just joking around, that I was paranoid. She said I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But I was. I knew what I saw. I felt sick, betrayed, and humiliated. The worst part, she didn't even try to deny it fully. Instead, she tried to turn it around on me. Said I was insecure, jealous, that I didn't trust her, that I was ruining her life because I couldn't handle her having a little fun. She called me controlling, said I was overreacting about the texts, but I knew better. I saw the truth in her eyes, and it's burned into my mind forever. After that, everything spiraled out of control. I couldn't even look at her the same way. The wedding was canceled, obviously, but it got worse. Turns out had been hiding a lot. I found out she'd stolen $250, $0 from our inheritance, money we'd been saving for a house for our future. She'd been secretly squirreling it away, planning something, I guess. She lied about everything, told me she was just trying to make a better life for herself. But I knew she was just greedy, selfish, and willing to ruin everything for her own gain. The day I discovered the money missing, I felt like my world was crashing down. I went through her bank accounts, and there it was, withdrawals, transfers, all in her name. I confronted her again, and she spun a web of lies. Said she needed the money, that she was going to start her own business, that I should trust her. But I didn't believe her. I could see her face, cold, calculating, and completely unrepentant. That's when I realized I was losing everything. A woman I loved, my trust, my savings, and now even the house we'd bought together. She's trying to claim half of the house's value now, even though we're divorced. She's suing me, saying I have no right to keep what's hers, that she deserves her fair share. It's like she's trying to take everything I have left just to stick it to me. I feel like I'm in a nightmare I can't wake up from. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel betrayed, angry, and exhausted. Every time I think about how she lied and cheated, a part of me wants to tear her apart, but I also know I need to find a way to move on. I never thought I'd be in this position. I thought I knew her. Turns out I didn't know her at all. And now I'm left trying to pick up the pieces of my shattered life, wondering how someone I loved could do this to me, especially with her own sister. After everything I found out, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The betrayal was so deep, so raw, I couldn't process it all at once. The worst part was knowing that the woman I'd loved and trusted had not only cheated on me with her own sister, Lisa, but had also stolen $250,000 from our inheritance. That money was supposed to be our safety net, our future, and she took it like it was nothing, as if she was entitled to it all along. The day after I uncovered her lies, I decided I couldn't just sit around. I had to act. I started digging into every detail I could find: bank statements, emails, texts, anything that could give me clarity. I also reached out to a lawyer because I knew the moment she started talking about claiming half the house, things were about to get uglier. I didn't want her to get away with this. I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. The first thing I did was confront Lisa. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but I needed to hear her side. I called her up and she was surprisingly defensive. She claimed she and were just having fun, that it didn't mean anything and that I was overreacting. She said they only kissed once and that the sex was a mistake, like that made it okay. Yeah, right. I could tell she was lying. I could hear it in her voice. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I knew better. She was just as guilty as. I pressed her further. I told her I knew about the money, about her stealing from us. She hesitated for a moment, then admitted had asked her to help hide some of the cash. She said promise to pay her back, but I knew that was just bullshit. Nothing about that family was innocent anymore. The more I learned, the angrier I got. It was like peeling an onion. Every layer revealed more lies and deception. Meanwhile, was still insisting she was innocent. She kept telling me I was paranoid, that I was making everything up. She claimed that I was just jealous and insecure, that she'd never cheat on me, especially not with her own sister. She said I was ruining her life and that I was just trying to control her. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but I couldn't ignore the evidence I'd uncovered. It was too overwhelming. I remember the night I finally lost it. I sat her down, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her I knew everything: the affair, the money, the lies. Her face twisted into a sneer. She told me I was a jealous fool, that I had no proof, and that I was just trying to manipulate her. She said she deserved her share of the house because she was entitled to it, that she'd worked hard for the money she'd stolen, and that I couldn't take that away from her. That moment hit me hard. I realized she was willing to lie and cheat her way out of everything, and she believed she could get away with it. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. How could she do this? How could she betray me, her own sister, and then try to steal what's left of our future? I felt like I was drowning in a sea of lies with no way out. Every day was a struggle between anger and despair. I'd wake up wondering how I got to this point, how I let someone so manipulative and selfish into my life. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to fight back. So I started gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator just to be sure. I needed proof to fight her in court if it came to that. I also contacted a financial advisor because I didn't want her to drain everything I had left. I wanted to protect what little was still mine. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even years. She'd been living a double life, and I was just the latest victim. At this point, I was starting to see that I couldn't fix this marriage. The trust was shattered beyond repair. But I wasn't ready to give up everything without a fight. I knew she was going to try to claim half the house, even though we're divorced. She's already filed a lawsuit claiming she deserves her share because she's contributed to the house. That's laughable. I paid for most of it, and she's just trying to steal what's left of my life savings. I can't let her do that. I won't. The hardest part was realizing I had to start rebuilding my life from scratch. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am. Betrayed, angry, hurt, and trying to stay afloat. The one thing I do know is that I won't be a victim. I'll fight her every step of the way. I've learned that sometimes people you love are capable of the worst betrayals. And when that happens, you have to stand up for yourself, even if it means losing everything in the process. Because if you don't, they'll keep taking until there's nothing left. I don't know what's coming next. All I know is I have to keep going. I have to get through this mess, protect what's mine, and somehow find peace again. The trust is gone, but I still believe in justice. And I'm not done fighting yet. After I had all the evidence I needed, I felt like I was walking on a razor's edge. The shock of her betrayal still haunted me, but now there was also a fierce drive to do something about it. I knew was not going to go quietly, and I had to prepare for the storm coming. She's the type who can lie with a straight face, manipulate every situation, and spin stories to make herself look innocent. That's exactly what she tried to do when I confronted her with my findings. She sat there, her face a mask of calm, but her eyes betrayed her. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just paranoid, that she loved me and never cheated. She threw out every excuse, how she was under pressure, how Lisa was just a bad influence, and how I was just jealous because I couldn't handle her success. It was all boilerplate, the same tired lies she'd been repeating for months. She even had the audacity to say that I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was jealous of her independence. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew the truth. I had the texts, the bank statements, and the witness testimony from Lisa herself. That's when I decided I needed legal help. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp guy named Mark who specialized in divorce and asset disputes. I laid everything out, her affair, the theft, the lawsuit she was planning to claim half the house. Mark told me I had a strong case, especially since I could prove the money was stolen and that the affair was ongoing. While all this was happening, his attitude started changing. She became more aggressive, more bitchy. She'd call me names, accuse me of trying to control her, say I was a terrible husband for accusing her of such things. She insisted she deserved her fair share of the house because she'd contributed, by which she meant the money she stole. She claimed that since we were married, she was entitled to half, regardless of her actions. That's when I realized she was willing to lie and manipulate her way through everything, even if it meant destroying her own reputation. One night she went off on me, yelling that I was a controlling asshole, that she was the victim here, and that I was just trying to ruin her life. She looked at me with disgust, her voice dripping with venom. That was the moment I decided I had to get out of this situation. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I told her I was filing for divorce, and she just sneered. She said I'd regret it, that she'd take everything I had, including the house. The emotional toll was mounting. I felt betrayed, angry, and overwhelmed. Every day felt like a battle. I'd wake up wondering how I could have been so blind to her true nature. I started questioning everything. What I saw, what I believed, who she really was. I'd catch myself thinking about the good times, then instantly remember the lies, the cheating, the theft. It's like my mind couldn't reconcile the person I loved with the monster she'd become. Meanwhile, she was trying to spin her story in court. She claimed she'd been planning to start her own business, that the money she took was for investment purposes, and that I was trying to block her from her rights. She even hired her own lawyer, a slick guy named Todd, who kept trying to undermine my credibility. I knew she was playing dirty, but I had the evidence. That's what kept me going. I also discovered that had been secretly contacting her lawyer behind my back, trying to negotiate a settlement that would give her half the house and the inheritance money she stole. She was clearly planning to fight dirty, and I had to be ready. I started documenting every interaction, every conversation, every financial transfer. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not after what she did. The more I dug, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She'd been living a double life for months, cheating, stealing, lying. And she had the nerve to try to turn the tables on me, to claim I was the bad guy. But I knew the truth. I'd seen it all. I just had to hold on until the court proceedings started, and I was determined to fight her every step of the way. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. The thing is, I don't know how this is going to end. I'm exhausted, emotionally drained, and still trying to make sense of it all. I never thought I'd be in a situation where the woman I loved so much would betray me so completely. But I've learned something valuable. Trust is fragile, and sometimes it's better to cut your losses early than to keep holding on to something that's already broken. I just hope I come out of this with some dignity intact, and that I can rebuild my life from this chaos. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and honestly, it was brutal. Lawyer Todd was aggressive from the start, trying to spin everything in her favor. She was claiming she deserved half the house because, according to her, she contributed equally by being a stay-at-home wife for a couple of years and by helping manage the household, which she painted as a form of investment. She even tried to argue that her stealing the inheritance money was just a bad decision, not outright theft, and that I was overreacting by accusing her of fraud. I had all the evidence, though. The bank statements, the texts, Lisa's confession, and the reports from the private investigator. I gave my lawyer everything and we prepared for the worst. The first court hearing was a nightmare. Showed up with her bitchy smirk trying to act innocent and hurt, but I could see through her act. She looked at me with disdain like I was some obstacle to her happiness. She kept insisting she was the victim, that her affair and theft were just mistakes, and that I was trying to ruin her. During the proceedings, I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she had betrayed me so completely. Sadness because I still loved her, even after all the lies. I kept replaying that moment when I first saw the texts. The moment I realized my wife was cheating with her own sister. It haunted me. I wondered how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. But I also knew I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let her get away with this. In court, this lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to half the house because they claimed she contributed in her own way, by managing the household, by supporting me, and by being a partner in every sense. But I countered with evidence that she had stolen money and cheated on me. I presented the bank statements showing her transfers, the texts, and the confession from Lisa. The judge looked at all of it carefully, and I could tell he was skeptical of claims. Meanwhile, was doing her best to manipulate the situation. She kept crying, claiming she was hurt, that she only made mistakes, and that I was a terrible husband for accusing her of everything. She even tried to paint herself as a victim, saying she was suffering because I was controlling and jealous. I wanted to vomit hearing her spin her lies, but I kept my composure. I knew the truth was on my side. The emotional toll was relentless. Every day I felt like I was fighting not just for my property, but for my sanity. I'd wake up dreading the next court date, knowing she'd try every dirty trick in the book to get what she wanted. I was exhausted physically and mentally. I felt betrayed by the woman I'd loved and betrayed by my own family, especially Lisa, who was still trying to deny her involvement. I knew she was lying to save herself, but I also knew I had enough evidence to expose her. The worst part was realizing that was now trying to turn the legal battle into a personal attack. She accused me of trying to take her rights away, of being a cold, controlling husband, and of ruining her life. She told the judge that I was the one who manipulated her, and that she deserved a fair share because she sacrificed everything. That, even after she'd lied, cheated, and stolen from us. I couldn't believe her audacity. Throughout all this, I kept thinking about the money she stole. That quarter of $1 million could have been used to buy us a new house, start a business, or save for our future. Instead, she drained it all, thinking she could just walk away with half of everything. I was furious. How could she be so selfish, so manipulative? It felt like I was fighting to protect what little was left of my life, my hard-earned assets, and my dignity. I decided I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I hired a forensic accountant to trace her financial moves. We uncovered more transfers, hidden accounts, and even some shell companies she set up to hide her assets. I knew I had her backed into a corner now. I was determined to prove she had no right to claim half the house, especially since so much of her contribution was built on lies and theft. The court date loomed, and I felt like I was in a war I couldn't win. I knew was going to pull every trick she could to get what she wanted, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. I'd be damned if she took everything I worked for, just because. She was too selfish to be honest. I was ready to fight her to the bitter end, even if it meant losing everything else in the process. I just wanted this nightmare to be over, to finally find some peace and rebuild my life away from her lies and betrayal. The court hearing was intense, I won't lie. Lawyer Todd kept trying to undermine everything I presented. He kept hammering on her contributions, claiming she was an equal partner in every sense, even though I had mountains of proof that she'd been stealing from us for months. I could see smirking sometimes, confident she'd spin her lies into a win, but I was determined not to let her get away with it. The judge listened carefully. I laid out the evidence, the bank statements showing her withdrawals, the texts confirming her affair with Lisa, the confession from Lisa herself. I also brought in the forensic accountant's report, which exposed how she'd set up shell companies to hide her assets. I watched her face change when the judge looked over the documents. Her usual bitchy smirk faded a little, replaced with a flicker of worry. His lawyer tried to argue that her contributions should give her half the house, that she'd been a partner in the marriage in her own way. She even claimed she'd been planning to start a business with the stolen money, that she deserved her share because she'd supported me emotionally. It was all bullshit. I knew she was trying to manipulate the court, but I had everything documented. Meanwhile, kept crying, trying to portray herself as the victim. She told the judge she was hurt, that I was controlling and jealous, and that she deserved her fair share. But I saw through her act. I knew she was just trying to save herself, to come out looking innocent when she was the one who had betrayed everything. I felt a mix of anger and despair, knowing she was willing to lie, cheat, and steal her way out of this. As the hearing progressed, I felt my emotions surge. I was furious at her for everything: cheating, stealing, lying. I was also heartbroken because I'd loved her once. I kept thinking about the woman I thought I knew, the one who used to smile at me and say she loved me. That woman was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. I wanted to scream, but I kept my composure, knowing that my evidence spoke for itself. At one point, tried to turn the tables, claiming I was trying to control her and that I was jealous of her success. She said I was trying to ruin her reputation, that I was just an insecure, possessive husband. I clenched my fists, fighting back the urge to lash out. I knew her game. She was desperate to look like the victim now, but I refused to let her manipulate the court. Throughout the entire process, I kept thinking about the money she stole. That $250,000 was supposed to be our security, our future. Instead, she used it to fund her lies and her affair. I was furious, knowing she'd been living a double life for months. And now she was trying to claim half the house, even though she'd contributed nothing but lies and theft. The judge finally took a break to deliberate. I sat there, heart pounding, exhausted beyond belief. I knew I'd done everything I could, and now it was up to the court. I looked over at her face, a mix of arrogance and fear. I realized then that I was finally standing up for myself. For the first time in months, I felt a tiny flicker of hope that justice might be served. When the judge returned, he ruled in my favor. He awarded me full ownership of the house, citing clear evidence that had committed fraud and that her contributions were built on lies. She was furious, screaming and crying, but the judge was firm. His lawyer tried to appeal, but I knew I had the stronger case. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd fought for what was right, but at what cost? Now I'm left picking up the pieces. The house is mine again, and I'm working with my lawyer to make sure can't take anything else. The court also ordered her to pay back the stolen inheritance money, which I plan to pursue aggressively. I've learned a lot through this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and some people will betray you for their own gain without a second thought. I've also realized I'm stronger than I thought. I won't let her or anyone else run over me again. But the hardest part, knowing that I loved her once and that she threw it all away for lies, sex, and greed. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm done being a victim. I'll rebuild even if it takes years. I just want to find peace, away from her manipulations and betrayal. I hope anyone reading this learns to trust their instincts, to protect themselves, and to never ignore the red flags. Because sometimes, love isn't enough, and betrayal cuts deeper than words can say. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much I've been through and how much I've learned. Losing my wife, my marriage, and nearly everything I worked for was the hardest thing I've ever faced. But it also forced me to confront the truth about trust, betrayal, and what really matters in life. Lies and greed didn't just destroy our relationship, they almost destroyed me. But I survived, and I'm starting to piece myself back together. One thing I've come to understand is that you can't control other people's actions, but you can control how you respond to them. I could have fallen apart, let her destroy what was left of me, but I chose to fight back. I gathered evidence, I stood my ground in court, and I refused to be a victim. That took a lot of strength I didn't know I had. Looking back, I see that the biggest lesson is about boundaries. I should have seen the warning signs early. Her controlling attitude, her secretive behavior, the way she dismissed my feelings. But I ignored them, thinking love would fix everything. It doesn't. Love isn't enough when lies and betrayal are involved. Sometimes you have to walk away no matter how much it hurts. I also learned that greed and selfishness can turn people into monsters. Wanted everything, my house, my money, my life, and she was willing to lie, cheat, and steal to get it. That realization made me realize how important it is to protect yourself, to be vigilant, and to trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Now, I'm trying to rebuild my life. I've started focusing on myself, going back to work, reconnecting with friends, and trying to find joy again. It's not easy. The pain of betrayal lingers, and I know I'll carry scars from this experience, but I also know that I'm stronger now. I can survive even the worst storms. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, I want to say this. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't let love blind you to the truth. Protect yourself, and don't be afraid to walk away if you sense something's wrong. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity matter more than any relationship, even if it feels like the end of the world at the time. As I close this chapter of my life, I feel a strange sense of relief. I've faced the worst and I've come out the other side. Maybe I'll find love again someday, or maybe I won't, but I'll never let anyone betray me like that again. I've learned to value myself more, to set boundaries, and to trust my gut, and that's something no betrayal can take away. So, if you're reading this and you're in a dark place right now, know that it gets better. You're stronger than you think. Trust yourself, stand up for what's right, and never settle for someone who doesn't deserve your trust. Life will throw its punches, but you have the power to stand tall and rebuild. That's what I plan to do, and I hope everyone else can find their way too.